Probably started renting about 15 years ago, so I would have been in my early 20s. And since then I've probably rented about 8 properties.
I must have lived in over a dozen rentals, if not 20. Can't be that many.
I think I've lived in about 8 or 9 in over 18 years.
I've been fortunate enough to have landlords who've respected the fact that I pay my rent on time and I take good care of the property. I'm a professional, I'm an adult.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some good experiences. My current rental is really good, rental property. The landlord, I live out the back of a shop and the landlord runs the shop out the front. He's an old Italian man. He's just very polite and nice. I mean, we still go through a real estate agent, but I can just deal with him directly.
Well, I think if you have a real estate agent who's sort of competent in doing their job, it works fine.
I like to think that most of them are professional and have your best interest at heart, but at the end of the day they have a certain amount of KPIs and they work on a commission basis, and I think trying to get tenants into rental properties is like on the lower end of their job sort of spectrum. Like they'd much prefer to be making massive commissions from selling big estates or houses.
You do very much feel that you're at the mercy of the personality of the real estate agent. And sometimes you get a real estate agent who is incompetent or lazy or vindictive, and it can really make your whole experience, kind of hellish.
In terms of finalising bonds, I've had a few issues with getting my bonds back, which I've sort of felt have not been that fair. I remember one instance I went through cleaning my property, which was always kept in really good condition, and I wasn't going to get my $2,000 bond back because I didn't dust the light fittings on the outside porch.
I guess the worst example of real estate agent problems I've had is just when the house has needed repairs. It's been emergency repairs, like the sink is backed up and water starts coming out of the bath and flowing because the pipes are clogged up. So, it's happened on the weekend. I think I got an agreement from the real estate agent that, yes, I'm going to have to call an emergency plumber. So I called one. I had to pay them on the spot. So I think it was $250 or whatever. And then obviously I went to the real estate agent, I need to be refunded for this money. And just get no response. No response for days, for weeks. Only at the very end of my lease, when I'm trying to get my bond back, I'm like, you still owe me this $250 that they've just been ignoring. And, I really had to go in there and sort of fight. I had to go in there face to face and go, where's the $250? You owe me.
The biggest issue, I think, facing students is that landlords and real estate agents don't want students to move into their properties. They are the last people to be selected for a house. So that's what I think is the most difficult. And also it's prohibitive. It's very expensive now for a student today to move in to find a property that's actually affordable.
My worst rental experience was just my previous rental. I was living on my own in a very small apartment, and after about 6 months of living there I noticed that the walls were cracking, like huge cracks where you could see the light coming, like if you stood outside at night you could see the light shining through. And I contacted the real estate agent and I said, I think the house is sinking. And over like many months they found out that yes, in fact the house was sinking. It was a dodgy build, and they went for an insurance claim, so they had to repair the house. And so you know, after like another 6 months of like asking about when these repairs would happen, what was going to happen, I received a call on a Thursday afternoon saying that the repairs would start on Monday and would go for 5 weeks. And then I'd be required to move out of the property for another 6 weeks. So I was given like, you know, 2 days notice that this was going to happen. The day that it was meant to start, I moved all my plants away from the edge of the building because I had a little courtyard. Went to work, I came home and there was this big fence at the end of the property saying construction site, do not enter. And then I went into my apartment and they had removed everything from the courtyard, moved all my stuff, I didn't know where it was, and they had put a piece of wood up against my back door so I couldn't get outside anymore, and there was a big trench around the house. So I was really upset because I didn't know where any of my stuff was. I called Consumer Affairs, like, what can I do to negotiate in terms of paying rent? And they said, oh, it's basically under the Act, you're not covered for anything. It's just whatever you can negotiate. So I got a 50% rent reduction for the time of the internal works. And then obviously when I moved out, I didn't have to pay rent. Yeah, after about 4 weeks, I was checking like, what's happening? Am I going to be able to move back in? And they were just saying, oh, it's going to take longer, and it ended up going on for about, it must have been like 3 months that I was homeless, you know, just staying with friends, and they couldn't give me an answer, and in the end I had to go to I went to the rental tenancy union, and they helped me draft a legal letter to get out of the lease, and then I just had to find another place to live. So it was about 4 months of my life.
So most recently I moved into a house with my husband and my 3 children. And it was an exhausting process moving in, but we were great, happy to finally be in there. And then 2 weeks later, the real estate agent called us to let us know that the house was going to be sold due to unforeseen circumstances. And so what that meant was that we endured 6 weeks of open for inspections twice a week, which was a terrible inconvenience to us because of it meant that we couldn't be at our house at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday night or in the middle of the day on a Saturday. They have to honour the lease agreement, but it's still stressful knowing that we've only been there for 2 or 3 months now, and we might have to move out again in another 2 or 3 months potentially. Yeah.
How long did you want to stay there?
3 years, longer. Yeah.
I feel like renters need to be protected better here, more like they are in Europe, where people can rent properties for longer periods, have longer term leases, and they have more rights in recognition of the fact that it's common for people to rent properties their whole life. And that's becoming much more common now in Australia as well.
In terms of the fact that in Australia, a lot of renters are once they get past the year-to-year contract, they're on month-to-month contracts. And I think that for people who want to rent for the long term, who are in properties that they're quite happy with, they're content there, they would happily sign up for a longer period. As you say, for people with families, there doesn't seem to be that much scope to sign on for longer leases in Australia. And from my understanding of contracts that are available in Europe, there is much more of a flexibility around signing on for long-term leases so that people can actually make rental properties their home.
I really think that there needs to be more rights for renters when a landlord wants to undertake repairs in the property. At the moment, it is really just whatever you can negotiate, and that's fine if you've got good negotiation skills. But again, if you come from a more vulnerable section of the community, how can you be expected to negotiate against a real estate agent or a landlord? I think it's really difficult when you're in quite a vulnerable situation. And also I think that we need to be able to have longer term leases so that we're not being moved on all the time and our rents aren't increasing all the time, and all the costs and the stress of moving on a regular basis.
One thing I've noticed that seems to be happening is that tenants, when you're trying to apply for a house, there seems to be a bidding war that's been created, a culture of bidding for a property and saying offering over the price that has been advertised. And I think that needs to be stopped. I think that's unfair to a lot of people who are wanting to rent properties. I think whatever has been advertised should be what they pay for that year.
You know, because it seems to happen every couple of years, people want to renovate, they want to put the rent up a lot. so they'll kick you out. It's happened to me a number of times, and it would be great basically to be able to have longer term leases so that you can reliably live somewhere for a couple of years and know that you're not going to have to move. You're not going to have to upset your life like that.